Hi there, this is Al 24 News live from Algiers. Coming up next in our news program. In our special news edition, we will deal with Western Sahara issue with Polisario UN representative Sidi Omar and Isabel Lawrence, researcher at the Center for African Studies at the University of Portugal. Talks aimed at reviving the nuclear agreement with Iran have been resumed in Vienna amid mutual accusations between Tehran and Western capitals and news of the UN Zionist plan to move militarily in the event of failure in Vienna. Also coming up, dozens of people, including migrants and refugees, died in a truck crash in Chiapas, southern Mexico. In a letter addressed to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, as President of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, Ghali, assured that the Polisario Front, which he leads, will not be involved in any peace process while Morocco continues to impose its policy of terror against Sahrawi civilians in the occupied areas of Western Sahara. It's worth mentioning that a year ago, on the 10th of December, just 37 days after Donald Trump lost his re-election bid to the Democrat Party, Joe Biden followed the former footsteps concerning Western Sahara's cause. And to talk more about this, I'm joined live by Polisario UN representative Sidi Omar from New York and Isabel Lawrence, researcher at the Center for African Studies at the University of Portugal. Well, we are going to start with Western Sahara President's letter, Ibrahim Ghali, to the United Nations Security Secretary General Antonio Guterres, which coincided with the International Human Rights Day celebrations. Then can we just say that the world really celebrates this special day while violations in the occupied territories of Western Sahara by the Moroccan occupation forces are still renewed every single time? To you, Omar, please.
Well, first, thank you very much for the invitation. Indeed, a large number of the international community unfortunately remains oblivious to the tragedy of the Sahrawi people, especially those Sahrawis who live in the occupied territories of the Sahrawi Republic and who, as we know, are subjected on a daily basis to unspeakable cruelty at the hands of the Moroccan security forces with full impunity. And that's why we call on all international community to come to the aid of our people and to save lives and not to continue dealing with double standards, focusing on some areas and doing nothing about other areas.
Sidi Omar, please let me just bring into our discussion Isabel Lorenzo, and always about President Ghali's latest statements, who said that there is no discussion of peace without putting an end to the occupation of Morocco and liberating the occupied Saharan territories. What do you think about this, Isabel?
Well, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for the invitation. I don't think that there was one day of peace since the day of occupation of 1945. So even if people speak about ceasefire, it was not peace, not for the Sahrawis occupied territories, neither for the Sahrawis in the refugee camps. And it's very important for peace. So to hear Antonio Guterres speak about peaceful resolutions that have been discussed for decades, but they have no mechanisms or intentions to put forward and to end the misery of these people. It's incredible, and it's a lack of honesty when each time the UN Secretary General speaks about peace, he should think about what he's saying. He should put pragmatic solutions forward, and the only pragmatic solution is to end the war, to end the occupation. This is the only way there will be peace for the Sahrawi people.
Back to you, Omar. The United Nations has included Western Sahara among the non-self-governing territories since 1963, and we can even find this in legal documents. So is it possible to say that Morocco is afraid of organizing a referendum in Western Sahara?
Yes, true. The occupying state of Morocco is afraid of having a free and fair referendum organized under the auspices of the United Nations in Western Sahara, where the Sahrawis can have the chance to exercise freely and democratically the right to self-determination, because Morocco knows very well that the Sahrawis will reject the illegal occupation and they will choose to confirm their national independence. So, despite the empty rhetoric that sometimes we hear from the Moroccans and their apologists regarding the impossibility of organizing the referendum, we know from recent cases of decolonization that the referendum remains the only viable and democratic way to ascertain the wishes of a decolonized people like the Sahrawi people. So there's no other way to solve the issue of Western Sahara except by organizing a free and fair referendum where the Sahrawis can freely and democratically exercise their right to self-determination and independence.
Again, Isabel, and digging a little bit in the same idea, Biden's administration has indirectly disavowed Trump's tweet, and the evidence is that immediately after Biden's election as president of the USA, his administration published the world map on its official website showing Western Sahara isolated from Morocco. Your comments, please.
Well, a tweet is not a decision of a state. So the ex-president Trump could have tweeted that Haiti is now owned by Japan. I don't know. But it's nothing official. It's not discussed. And you cannot recognize the occupation of Morocco because it's against international law. So you would have to to international law and disrespect it. I don't think that the Biden administration in their first weeks wanted to address the issue. They stayed quiet about it. But now we see some backsteps. I hope they will continue. Like, for instance, the resolution they had recently to not support several military engagements they had with Morocco. So I hope that this will be a wake-up call for the Biden administration that the Sahrawi will not accept this indecision and this occupation and the violations of human rights.
Before we finish with you, Omar, is it possible to say that Western Sahara issue has come to the surface more than ever, especially when we talk about the last war that has passed its first year so far?
Well, it's true that the issue of Western Sahara has gained some visibility, particularly as you mentioned after the 30th of November last year, when Morocco violated the ceasefire and launched a new war against our people. But this is really ironic, because while the Sahrawi people remained committed fully to the ceasefire throughout the past 30 years, the international community looked the other way. And that's what gave Morocco the chance to keep on oppressing our people. Now that our people were forced to take up arms again, indeed, the world is waking up a little bit slowly to the new reality, although the United Nations, and particularly the Security Council, has not done nothing actually to address the issue. So our people have demonstrated extreme patience and commitment to peace, but at the same time, our people are determined to continue their struggle until they gain their rights back and enforce the sovereignty of our republic over the entire territory of the Sahara Republic.
And we finish with you, Isabel, as a female who has been a victim of the Moroccan regime, and for sure, you feel what Western Sahara women are going through. Can you tell us a little bit about your own experience and the violations Western Saharan women are facing on a daily basis in this case?
I don't see myself as a victim. I see human rights as a victim when the Moroccans don't allow me to enter Western Sahara, when they expel me, when they threaten me, inside UN buildings, inside commissions. So the real victim here are human rights. And the Sahrawi women are without any doubt the bravest women I've ever encountered, who have for decades been demonstrating in the occupied territories in a non-violent fashion. They have been advocating for peace in all forums. And what do we see? We see Sultana Khaya, for instance, one of many, of hundreds of examples, but Sultana Khaya is now more in the spotlight because she is under what they call house arrest. But it's not even a house arrest since she was never accused of anything. She never had any criminal file. So she is not accused of anything. She is living under siege with her sister, with her mother, with her nephews, with her nieces for over 1 year. They cut off their electricity, their water. They are surrounded by police. They are attacked. They are sodomized. They have been victims of sexual abuse. They have difficulties to have the groceries. The most basic needs are impeded to them since November 2020. And it is impossible to understand why the United Nations do not intervene, why MINURSO does not intervene without or with mandate for human rights regards. This is a situation that is incredible.
Thank you so much, Polisario UN Representative Sidi Omar, New York, and Isabel Lawrence, researcher at the Center for African Studies at the University of Portugal, who joined us both via Skype. And now moving on to another story, talks amid reviving the nuclear agreement with Iran have been resumed in Vienna amid mutual accusations between Tehran and Western capitals and news of a U.S. Zionist plan to move militarily in the event of failure in Vienna. Negotiations are taking place between Iran and the 1+4 group, including Germany, France, Britain, Russia, and China, along with a representative of the European Union. The United States participates in the negotiations indirectly. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova announced that the European Union has joined the militarization of Ukraine, which has led to an impasse in negotiations on a peaceful settlement of the Ukraine crisis. Hossein Berkan.
Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova stated that the European Union recently joined the militarization process of Ukraine and that the Council of the European Union took a decision on allocating 31 million euros to provide military technical assistance to the Ukrainian armed forces. Zakharova added that this decision does not help bring peace to Donbass, and in this light, the negotiations on the peace settlement have in fact reached a dead end.
With the support of NATO countries pumping Ukraine, which is embroiled in civil war with weapons, Kyiv is building up its contingent on the line of contact in Donbass. The number of ceasefire violations happened since the signing of additional measures. Strengthening it in July of 2020 is coming close to 90,000. The special monitoring OSCE mission to Ukraine registers the redeployment of heavy weapons, including high-caliber artillery and armored vehicles, to the east of the country by Kyiv.
The Russian diplomat also reported that the Ukrainian forces are increasing their presence on the line of contact in eastern Ukraine, explaining that with the support of NATO countries that supply Ukraine with weapons, the country in which a civil war is currently underway, while Kyiv is increasing the number of its units on the line of contact in Donbass. For the western part, the new German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock has threatened Russia Thursday after a meeting with her French counterpart Jean-Yves Le Drian in the French capital Paris that there will be serious consequences in the event of an escalation of Russian side in the current conflict with Ukraine. The new German minister stressed the avoidance of any military escalation and said that solution can only be reached through the diplomatic path, and made it clear that she and her French counterpart are ready to work on that in a deep way.
We are living in challenging times as we see those days. The Russian troop development near Ukraine must concern us, with a view to Ukraine itself, but also with a view to our security in Europe. Last week in Riga, NATO sent a very clear message. And I want to underline very firmly, the new government fully maintains this commitment.
This escalation in tension comes few days only after the video call meeting between Joe Biden and Putin, and it is expected that the two leaders will have another meeting in the upcoming weeks.
The government of the Republic of Nicaragua declares that it recognizes there is only one China existing in the world. On the other hand, Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs expressed sadness and regret and said it would immediately recall its diplomatic staff. Nabil Khazini.
Nicaragua has broken diplomatic ties with Taiwan. Nicaraguan Foreign Minister Denis Moncada announced the decision in a statement.
Starting from today, the government and the Republic of Nicaragua break the diplomatic relations with Taiwan.
The government of the Republic of Nicaragua declares that it recognizes there is only one China existing in the world. Denis Moncada added that the People's Republic of China is the only legitimate government that represents all of China, and Taiwan is part of the Chinese territory.
The government of the Republic of Nicaragua declares that it recognizes that there is only one China in the world. The People's Republic of China is the only legitimate government that represents all of China, and Taiwan is an unalienable part of the Chinese territory.
Taiwan said it was deeply saddened, adding that Nicaragua has disregarded the many years of friendship. The decision comes as the U.S. State Department called for democracies to expand engagement with Taiwan. The move taken by Nicaragua may encourage more countries, mainly those that intend to attract Chinese investments, to cut diplomatic ties with Taiwan in favor of China.
The historical situation of Nicaragua between China and Taipei, it will unlikely many countries will follow Nicaragua, because when you compare it to the China with 24 million democratic islands, Taiwan, China today has the biggest power in the world, almost the largest economy and one of the biggest military. That's why today the PRC and Beijing using it as the military and economic power into the diplomatic success.
Taiwan's list of international allies has declined from 21 down to 14 since President Tsai Ing-wen took office in 2016.
An official tribunal of lawyers and campaigners said Chinese President Xi Jinping bore primary responsibility for what it said was genocide, crimes against humanity and torture of Uyghurs and members of other minorities in the Xinjiang region. China dismissed the tribunal, which is headed by British lawyer Geoffrey Nice and has no powers of sanction or enforcement, as a farce being used by its enemies to spread lies. Myanmar coup leader Min Aung Hlaing has been accused of military crimes against Myanmar population. The crimes were committed after thousands of people took to the streets in rejection of the coup. Thousands of people in the rejection movement were killed by the military forces during protests. Ayedi Osama.
Coup Myanmar leader Min Aung Hlaing was accused of crimes against humanity that were committed by the forces he commands. The accusations were addressed by the International Criminal Court as the forces of Myanmar military leader made a crackdown against protesters refusing Hlaing's coup. Myanmar Accountability Project ordered Hague Tribunal on Friday to open crime investigations for the violent crackdown and torture practices imposed on coup-rejecting protest movement and rights activists. The situation in Myanmar was priorly characterized by the UN on July to be brute force terror campaign, and as stated by Myanmar Accountability Project director, the so-called coup leader is criminally responsible for the security forces under his command committing mass atrocity crimes. Since the coup, over 1,305 people, including 75 children, have been put to death in mass protests against the coup. Violence against protesters also prompted them to arm themselves, which triggered the situation to more violence in the country. Myanmar Accountability Project stated on Thursday that it had gathered enough evidence concerning the torture, crimes, and violence, which are worsening the situation in the country. It stated also that these unhumanitarian practices are systematic and widespread, explaining that forces were acting in coordinated manners in different regions in the country at the same time. Myanmar military responded to the accusations, stating that the power grab was necessary because of fraud during the parliamentary election. However, independent observers reported that no evidence was expressed to support the claim.
Dozens of people, including migrants and refugees, died in a truck crash in Chiapas, southern Mexico. According to officials, the driver was speeding, which made him lose control of the truck, and that injured were taken to the hospitals of the area for more medical care. Ylva Johansson, EU Commissioner, announced that 15 European Union member states agreed to host 40,000 Afghan migrants in their countries, a decision that comes at a time when Afghanistan is at the edge of an economic crisis and Afghans continue to flee into Europe. Nabil Khazini.
15 European Union member states have agreed to take in 40,000 Afghans for resettlement. Ylva Johansson, EU Commissioner, announced after a meeting with European interior ministers.
I could announce today that 15 member states have pledged to give protection to 40,000 Afghans, on top of the pledges for resettlement that I do for other areas globally.
25,000 of the migrants will arrive to Germany, more than 3,000 to the Netherlands, while Spain and France each will welcome 2,500 Afghans. Other EU countries will host less migrants. Ylva Johansson said this decision is a step further to move from illegal to legal migration, calling it an act of solidarity.
I think we all share in the room the willingness to move away from irregular arrivals towards regular migration, where we can have an orderly migration management. And I think this is an impressive act of solidarity, being ready to welcoming 40,000 more Afghans for resettlement or humanitarian admission or via evacuation.
United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees Filippo Grandi has warned that 85,000 Afghans who are living in dire situations outside the European Union bloc need relocation and has asked Europe to take more than half. Thousands of Afghans fled their country into countries next to the EU borders, many of them to Belarus, where a migrant crisis has emerged, causing an alarming humanitarian catastrophe. Afghanistan is at the edge of the risk of famine and is facing an economic crisis. More Afghan refugees are expected to arrive to Europe, as half of the Afghan population is in the need of humanitarian assistance.
A poll for the Times newspaper revealed that Johnson's Conservative Party lost their dominance, dropping by 3 points from December the 2nd, while a counter-party increased by 4. On the 8th of December, Johnson announced COVID restrictions a few hours after apologizing for sharing old video of staff laughing about a party when festivities were forbidden, which created confusion and made people believe there was a Christmas party and not believe the Prime Minister. And for more sports news, let's follow this report.
Leicester were top of the group going into the final round of matches, but Brandon Rodgers' team were condemned to unwanted place in the Europa Conference League after the defeat in Naples dropped them to the third place. Napoli had blown a 2-goal lead as Leicester hit back to level by half-time, but Eljif Yilmaz's second goal of the game won it for the host after the interval. Napoli ended in second place, 2 points ahead of Leicester, and will feature in the Europa League knockout round playoffs in February. The Dutch international scored an early opener and then added to his tally after Isian Capoue doubled Villarreal's lead. Last season Europa League winners were forced to cling on to advance as Group F runners-up, as Atlanta responded with goals from Ruslan Malinovsky and Dovan Zabata. While all eyes in Abu Dhabi will be on the headline drama of titles fight between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen this weekend.
I'm sure I have said many things, obviously I want to please my kids, my wife, but I'm not doing something to try to do the more important thing for me.
That's all from me, Nadia Kasmi, and the rest of the team. Please enjoy your evening. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.